Ready.
Start. Hi everyone. Do you get uncomfortable talking about sex? Sex is a really awkward topic in Singapore and people always try to find ways around it. One reason for this discomfort is due to the way we are taught about sexuality education in schools. So today, my group consisting of Alexis, Chilling, Kevin and myself will be presenting to you on sexuality education and its inadequacies. Let me first begin with a personal story. During NS, I had a friend called Brandon. He was a very sexually active individual. One day, he called me up and said, "Hey bro, I messed up." After that, he began to send me pictures of this really big ulcer on his penis. Naturally, we all assumed that he had contracted some kind of STD. The doctor at the DSC clinic also quickly came to that conclusion and started prescribing him medicine for all the known STDs. Unfortunately, none of those medications actually worked, and the problem eventually got worse. Over the next few months, it got so bad that Brandon had to resort to layering his underwear with plastic bags just to ensure that the fabric of the underwear does not stick to the skin of his penis, which would rip off every morning when he took off his pants. 7 months later, we found out that Brandon's case was actually a unique case of an allergic reaction to this drug, Arcoxia. So Brandon's case actually shows the attitudes that people, including professionals in the field, have about sex and STD. And he's not the only one. In 2016 alone, 8,000 cases of STDs were reported, and 60% of those were from the age group 10 to 29 years old. And this only represents a fraction of the people who are sexually active in Singapore. All these people have been through the abstinence model of sexuality education since 2005. So I'm sure all of you will remember the big ABCs of MOE sexuality education, namely abstinence, being faithful, and using contraceptives when you do have sex. However, not much is actually taught about what happens after you have sex, and the large proportion of people who are already having sex are neglected. For example, condoms have a 98% effectiveness, but that is only when you use it correctly. Other problems that they do not cover would be the different types of contraceptives and how to use them, how to develop and maintain healthy sexual relationships, and most importantly, how to deal with problems with your sexual health. This leads to problems when people encounter these problems with their sexual health, leading to emotional stress, strained relationships, and causing people to slowly feel estranged from their friends and family. So what would you do if one of you or your siblings actually encountered such a problem? So ladies and gentlemen, trial and error is not the right way to learn about sex. Sex is an essential part of human life, and we should not deny our young people the knowledge to this essential part of our life. Okay. My next member, Alexis, will be elaborating on the current problems with our current model of sexuality education.
Right, so today I'll be talking about the relevance of sex ed in Singapore and why sex ed is not enough, current sex ed is not enough, and where and how we should be focusing on, mainly to change it to address the two main issues that today's students might encounter, which are sexual identity and sexual exploration. And so despite sex ed having been implemented for many years, there has been in fact an increase in 8% in reported STDs in students in Singapore. And let's look at the big picture. Today's culture is self-serving, indulgent, permissive, and even autonomous as well. And people and students have easy access to info. Therefore, lack of knowledge and ignorance is no longer a valid reason for these statistics to occur. So we can observe and see that traditional ways of approaching and understanding sexuality has in fact taken a backseat. And if we were to examine the current state of values and norms in society, we need to examine and see to what extent does our sex ed take into account these changes and adjust them in material. Because let's face it, like even if we are not comfortable with our material reflecting this kind of liberal ideals and concepts, the mindsets and norms of students and the things that they face in society are just going to continue to progress ahead. So one of the ways we can match the needs is to pander to those students who are already in relationships. There's a huge misconception that people who are in committed relationships do not face any risk. But in actuality, people from casual and close relationships both face the same risk in sexual aspect, and we can also see that sexual exploration occurs in close relationships, and this is a fact that we can no longer be ignorant towards. In the 2017 Straits Times article, it says that there's a rise in STDs because students face external pressures to engage in unprotected sex, even in the context of a relationship. And therefore, students do know about some protection methods, but they are not taking action because of a variety of external reasons. And therefore, we believe that sexual education should take into consideration these external variables in churning out new material that are more relevant for students. And also creating theoretical and practical handles for students to be more confident in and to have a better sense of what to do in real-life situations that they face. So how can we move forward? There are 3 ways of doing so. Firstly, we can have honors material in sex ed to create safe spaces and to encourage honors discussions to take place in classrooms and also outside of classrooms. We can also, secondly, recognize the potential of collaboration between parents and teachers. So no longer is the sole responsibility of sex ed just on the teachers or educators, but also it's a collaborative effort between the family unit and educational institutes. Yeah, and also thirdly, we can stop treating sex as a taboo subject in society, because with more conversation and with students being more comfortable in talking and engaging about sex, I believe that they'll have more transparency and more discernment in the decisions that they make regarding sexuality. So now I'll be passing the time on to Kevin, who will be talking about how other countries approach their sex ed.
Thank you, Alexis. I'll be moving on to the sexual education approaches that other countries employ in order to evaluate the effectiveness of abstinence-based education. We'll be looking into 2 developed countries, namely the US and the Netherlands, which is showing difference in success on this public health issue. Starting off with the US. With the rise of teen pregnancy and HIV rates, the US have been funding annually $85 million in order to curb this public health issue through the abstinence-only sexual education system. It is the only sexual education approach in America, and it is required that abstinence must be taught in school. However, different states in the US actually have differing emphasis of abstinence, which results in different sexual health outcomes, which I'll be elaborating on later. Next will be Netherlands. Their sexual education curriculum, Long Live Love, is a comprehensive sexual education, and meaning that it not only focuses on the sexual health, but rather the holistic development of a teen's personal relationship building and sexual knowledge. Being a positive approach, it also encourages an open environment for discussion on sexuality and relationship at an early age. Furthermore, it is built off evidence that discussion about sex does not decrease the onset of sexual encounters, but rather make the experience much more pleasant and with lesser regrets. Interestingly, despite the difference in sexual education systems of the 2 countries, the rates of intercourse amongst teens does not vary. As you can see, the percentages of teens engaging in different sexual activities is similar for the US and the Netherlands. However, the difference lies in the public health statistics. As you can see, the numbers for the US is actually quite depressing. Out of 1,000 teens, around 170 are infected with STD, and out of every 1,000 female teens, 72 are pregnant and 41 actually gave birth. Interestingly, it has been found that states with a higher emphasis of abstinence actually fare worse compared to states with a lower emphasis of abstinence. This phenomenon, coupled with the huge difference from what we see in the Netherlands, I guess it begs the question of whether abstinence-based education is really the best or could more be done for Singapore to improve the public health issue. Moving back to our local context, Singapore's sexual education system actually stems from the assumption that it should begin at home and then continued by the school. However, as mentioned by sociologist Jared, family cultures do not operate in a vacuum, but rather is dependent on the larger society and the professionals. As such, how could families start discussing about sexual health topics if our ministry is actually shying away from it? As such, it is important for sexual health discussion to be spearheaded by the ministry, similar to that of Netherlands, so that the families and peers will similarly follow suit, removing the taboo around sex, and instead raise awareness and understanding for this public health issue. Next, I'll be passing my time on to Chilling, who will be elaborating on the benefits of comprehensive sexual education.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So now I'll be talking about comprehensive sexuality education, henceforth known as CSE. So Kevin has mentioned that CSE is actually holistic, positive, and evidence-based approach. So what are the benefits of CSE? Let's see. So we have 3 benefits. The first one is it'll teach students to be responsible in starting sexual relationships. Teaching the realities of sex actually will teach them to understand the responsibilities that they have in starting a sexual relationship. They'll learn to see sex as what it is, an intimate act between 2 persons with an emotional bond, and not some kind of thing that they can do just because they can. Yep. And next, CSE actually promotes habits of safe sex by teaching students the importance of contraceptives. Let's face it, students will be and have been having sex, whether we like it or not. So CSE is actually important to teach the habits of safe sex so that they can do it responsibly. Thirdly, educating CSE to the students will teach them to know their human sexual rights. Students have the rights to know their sexual rights and see what they can or cannot do in terms of sexuality, be it to others or done to them. Yep. So now that we know that there are strong benefits of CSE, why are we still stuck in the abstinence-based approach? Okay, so there are 3 underlying problems on why we are still stuck in the abstinence-based approach. Firstly, we are still stuck in the values-based approach due to our government adopting a conservative approach on sex ed to fit the ideology of the older generation. The government maintains a morally upright persona by trying to cater to the conservative group's beliefs. That's why they actually revised their older, more liberal sex ed to become the abstinence-based approach that we know now. Secondly, do you know that the teachers teaching abstinence-based approach is actually selected based on their aligned values with MOE? This means that they're actually in favor of the abstinence-based approach. With this biased selection process, it is no wonder that we are still stuck in the abstinence-based approach. Lastly, the rigid MOE framework actually restricts even the more liberal teachers in trying to initiate change because they are not willing for the risk to lose their stable jobs. All in all, these 3 problems all in all, these 3 problems severely prevents the comprehensive sexuality program, and there is one stakeholder that seems to hold the key, MOE. Okay, so to initiate a change, for change to happen, MOE really needs to be the one to initiate the change. How can Singapore boast itself as a world-class educational hub if our sex ed is so lacking in the way we handle it? It is proven that abstinence-based approach is actually not effective even in the most developed country, USA. So why are we still using it? Just because some conservative groups? That doesn't mean we should compromise our students' sexual health for their beliefs. So it has to change. Our abstinence-based approach has to change to a comprehensive sexual education now, and yeah, it has to change now. So in hindsight, it's only when we learn about other countries' sex ed do we actually understand our own problem. When going through Singapore's sex ed, many people would take it for granted for what it is and not question it. Thus, to solve the problem, we first need to know that there's one. We need to spread the awareness of the issue of our current sex ed so that changes can be made. So let's bring our attention to the inadequacy of our sex ed now. Thank you.